Well, he used the word retards, and
he turned to the crowd and called them retards.
He called them all retards. And the thing is, it's equivalent to now in my world. You know, I have a daughter with Down syndrome. I've worked very closely with the Down Syndrome Association over in the UK, Down Syndrome Ireland here, the Down Syndrome Centre over here in Dublin as well. And these are the sort of terms that certainly you feel as on now in this day and age with how we've gone on racism, how we've gone on sexism, and all various things. These are the sort of terms. This is the sort of language that is disgraceful. It is, and I understand gamesmanship. I understand all this that goes the hype around fights and giving each other all the abuse and all. We've seen it all now, and it does seem genuine animosity between these two. Fair enough, but for David Haye to use that word retard, not just once, Joe, because he's used it before, it's premeditated, so he knows exactly what he's saying. No one's actually corrected him to tell him the severity of using that word. You just think, look, come on, mate, you're actually representing the sport here. You're representing yourself, and if for a man to stand up in front of so many people and use that term, use that word, it's disgraceful, Joe.
Should we have him on the show?
I'd probably say yes. I would say yes. There's a lot that I found disgraceful, disgusting. There's many words I could have used to describe some of the language that he used. He evidently was racially abused from what he was saying. It wasn't actually clear in the footage that went out that he was racially abused. I don't know. Again, if he says it, fair enough. There's no issues. But the language that he used was, in my mind, and you know that I would work with a lot of, certainly I would meet a lot of people with special needs, a lot of families who have special needs children, special needs adults, and the term that he used when he's using words like retard in a press conference and then actually tweeting it out, actually what he'd said, that was the thing that stuck in my mind. There was actually no sense of what he'd said. He didn't actually realise if I'd used a racial term to describe anyone, it would never be my vocabulary. Never ever would be. But if I did, I would quite right expect to someone come down on me like a ton of bricks, and quite right, you would be asked to explain yourself and apologise for it. He hasn't apologised in any way for the language that he used in using that word, calling the Liverpool fans a retards. And that was the thing I took exception to, because he didn't have any sort of explanation for it. And I don't understand. I mean, again, I'm not jumping on some sort of moral high ground. I'm not trying to take anything over anyone with this chair at all. But what I think with it is that in this day and age, you should know. Personally, I think you should know. If I used any sort of term to whether it was racism, whether it was gender orientated or whatever it would be, I would expect someone to call me out on it.
All right, it's time for one of our most eagerly anticipated boxing interviews in a long time. Mr. David Haye has an unbelievable career already behind him, but is also one of the most interesting characters in boxing at the moment, given that he is not just an active fighter, but he is also a promoter. His promotions company, Haymaker Promotions, is already up and running, which is obviously clearly unbelievably difficult to do. And he's talking to us now ahead of the rematch with Tony Bellew. Good evening to you, David. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. All is very, very good.
Can I before we talk about the heavyweight division and what might happen for a victory in this, and indeed the difficulties of juggling a promotions career and a fighter, can we talk about the build-up to this fight and how it seems significantly calmer, more polite, better mannered than the previous build-up, and maybe talk to us a little bit about why that is?
Well, first time round, I was screaming and shouting. I really let Tony Bellew get under my skin. He really irritated me, and I really reacted to that, and that played right into his hands. It was a masterful mind game display by Tony Bellew, and I took it hook, line, and sinker. So I can't make that same mistake again. He thrives on his opponents getting angry, throwing out their game plan, and just swinging for the hills, trying to knock him out because they've got such dislike for him. I'm not that type of fighter. I'm a skilled, slick fighter who uses reflexes, timing, and a boxing ability to outwit my opponents. He flipped the script. He became the skilled fighter. I was missing. He was counter-punching me, and it fell apart for me. So credit to Tony Bellew. He used his annoying personality to get an advantage against me. So I cannot let that happen again. You fool me once, but you're not going to do it twice. And this time round, he's tried very, very hard. He's been really trying to say things to wind me up. But every time he says something, I take a deep breath. I think, I love you, Tony Bellew. Don't worry. Let's do it. Let's settle this score on May 5th.
Can I talk to you about one specific incident in the build-up to the last fight? I don't know if you know Kevin Kilbane, the former Ireland and Everton footballer, but he does a huge amount of work with charities that are for the Down syndrome charity in particular and for people with special needs. And he was particularly furious after the press conference that happened in Liverpool. There was a specific phrase which you used which upset him.
Yeah, I remember Tony Bellew and all his supporters were chanting some real sort of racial abuse at me. So I went down into the gutter and started screaming some profanities back at him. Once again, he got into my head and, he brought the worst out in me. So this time round, I cannot allow an instance like that to come off. Not only was it offensive to everyone there, it made me look like an absolute idiot. And, I'm ashamed of the way I acted in the whole build-up to that fight. And I'd never want to ever do that again. So that it was a lesson learned. I got a 50,000. Was it 50,000? I think it was about a £25,000 fine for that incident, and it went to charity. So I feel that I was reprimanded adequately, and the behaviour that I showed in the first fight. Not only will I not do it in this fight, but I won't do it in any future fight because it made me look a complete idiot.
Yeah, that's great to hear, to be honest, because we've literally been having a debate about whether or not we should, because it means so much to Kevin. He was so angry, and I think it was actually. I completely
understand, and I really did scrape the barrel there because once I'm not sure what it's like, but when you're getting 200 or 300 people screaming racial abuse at you, and you just I don't know. I'd never had that experience before, and I found something out about myself that I had to learn from, and so all you can do is learn and make the adjustments needed, and sort of try to move forward.
Yeah, to be honest, it seemed really out of character. Like
it was. But I've never had that many people. I've never had that many people scream. I've never had someone get under my skin like that. So I've never been in the position where I've been sort of pushed up against the wall and been felt like you're forced to try to screams as much abuse at someone ever before. But I know now how to control myself, and that as you said in the whole lead up to this fight, I've had to grow up. I'm a 37-year-old man. I can't be walking around like an idiot, screaming profanities at people, and you won't hear me lowering to the gutter like that ever again.
Here's the thing as well. It's like none of us really understand fully what it's like to be a boxer where you have to sell the tickets for the fight. You need to sell the pay-per-view, there's no real template for that beyond this is what Muhammad Ali did, this is what other fighters have done, this is what some fighters are actually quiet and they go about their skills and they hope that it's the purists who follow them. So the way that boxing has ended up becoming a sport where it's up to you guys to generate the revenue for it, that leads to these situations sometimes where people say stuff that are hurtful to people or that they don't actually mean.
Yeah, I completely understand. If you look at some of the biggest earners in the sport of boxing, Mike Tyson, when he was incarcerated for rape, I think after 4 years, he came out of prison and his value was at his highest. He made hundreds of millions. Same thing with Floyd Mayweather, domestic abuse, went to jail, came out of prison, and he was worth more than he's ever been worth. It's a strange dynamic with the sport of boxing where negativity is in some way financially rewarded. If you get some fighters who don't say an absolute peep, they'll say, "I really respect my opponent. I want the best man to win." Unfortunately, he's not compensated as much as someone who says, "I want to rip his heart out and jump on it," and they say some crazy stuff to get headlines, because the headlines get in the paper. People read the paper, people read the negativity, and they want to see who it is who is saying this profanity. You know, Conor McGregor says some of the most controversial things, yet he's the biggest grossing mixed martial artist of all time. Same thing with Floyd Mayweather, throwing money in people's faces. He owns a strip club. All these things that would normally be deemed as a negative for a sportsman, yet he's earning $500 million a fight. So it's a very, very weird and strange dynamics that only seems to happen in sort of combat fighting sports. But it is the way it is. You know, I kind of realised from an early age you need to really scream and shout. And you know, early in my career, I never really made too much noise. Only until I became world champion did I realise you really need to start getting out there. And me saying I want to fight this guy because he's the best isn't enough. You know, I had to say, with the whole Vladimir Klitschko thing, I had to really start screaming and shouting, saying stuff that really got headlines and, you know, really made people think, well, this guy's a bit crazy. I want to see this guy fight. And as a result, you know, I made a lot of money off the back of doing that. But it's got to a point now where I've made my money. It's time to just relax and just enjoy the journey that I'm on. And I think after the last fight against Tony Bellew, that's the one which I lost. You know, I probably said more terrible things in that build-up than I have done in all of my fights put together. And I lost. Maybe karma gave me a kick up the butt, and it's time to sort of clean up my ways and just kind of be more me. You know, try to just be more calm, be more relaxed. You know, I would never speak to my mother the way I was speaking to Tony Bellew. I wouldn't speak to my father as I was speaking to Tony Bellew. So maybe try to deal with Tony Bellew and his team the way I would treat my family, and let the fighting do the talking.
Do you want your fighters who you're promoting to be as mature as you are now at 37, or do you want them to be the 36-year-old David Haye who's shouting and screaming?
I want them to be themselves. Whatever their personality is, their personality is. You know, if for instance, like I'm sure there are people out there that really dislike Conor McGregor for saying the things that he says and wearing the mink coats and driving the Rolls Royces. They say, why are you doing that? Why not just go to the gym? I'm not interested in you screaming, shouting. But the majority of the world that's why he's such a superstar. So it is a fine balance between kind of being yourself and being flamboyant. You know, Ric Flair did it with professional wrestling. You know, Muhammad Ali used to do it. Even Jack Johnson. You know, you can go back through history. All the guys, all the showmen, all the guys who had a personality which was interesting. Whether you liked them, whether you loathed them, as long as you felt strongly one way or another, you're going to pay to see that guy. Lots of people pay to see these big-name fighters lose, but they're still paying. People were paying $50,000 a seat to watch Mayweather fight McGregor because they wanted Mayweather they wanted to be there when Mayweather lost. He didn't lose. He won like he always does. But they were happy to pay that type of money for that. And whilst you're in the industry where you can get people to pay I think it even went up to about $100,000, I heard, for some of the ringside seats for that Conor McGregor fight with Floyd Mayweather. $100,000 for one seat. You've connected with the public in a very, very powerful way. And you can only do that by invoking strong emotions.
When you hear Conor McGregor use the word boy in a press conference in the way he does, or when you hear some of the stuff that Tyson Fury says, the homophobic stuff, the misogynistic stuff, what do you do? Did you feel like McGregor overstepped the mark at that point, for example?
No, I don't. I think he says whatever he feels he needs to say to sell a fight and to make money. If he didn't say that, he'd probably make less money. If you were going to go and have a fight with someone, and the chances are you could lose, you know, you could get knocked out, you could get killed. You want to be compensated for doing this fight. It's like, okay, you're going to climb up a mountain. If you were going to free climb up a mountain, you could fall off and die. But if you get to the top, you get £1 million. But if you scream and shout and give loads of profanities to the mountain before you go up it and offend loads of people, but when you get to the top, you get 10 million, what are you going to do?
Everybody's going to scream profanities in the hope that they make it to the top.
It's exactly the same thing. You've got the risk is the same, but you got what you got at the end of it. You're going to be compensated tenfold for being obnoxious. Do you care if you're being obnoxious when you've got 10 million in the bank?
Does it stray too far?
When you've got 100, when you've got 200, at what stage do you realise? Okay, I've got enough money. Maybe be myself, or maybe you don't. Maybe you get addicted to it. It's a strange dynamic that lots of people could never quite comprehend and never quite understand the life of a fighter, the life of a boxer, a mixed martial artist. So it's hard to say he's wrong. he's right, he shouldn't say this, he should say that. It's like a comedian. Comedians offend so many people, but their job isn't to make people feel good, it's to make people laugh. Some people, if you get 90% of the people laughing and 10% of the people are offended, should that comedian not say that joke? And is there a comedian who could do a whole set without offending somebody? People being offended is funny to somebody. So it's the whole thing about free speech and society is so much deeper than just promoting a boxing match. It's about, but I understand. I'm at an age now where I don't really feel I need to offend people. Particularly after looking out, screaming and shouting like I did in the last fight. I looked back at that and was like, that was in horrendous bad taste. I was a bit ashamed of the things that I said and thought, okay, I need to grow up. It's not all about just pay-per-view numbers. It's about, boxing is a beautiful sport, and if I could try to take it out of the middle pages for saying such negative things, I'd prefer to do that.
Yeah. Did somebody help you with that, or was that like because...
No, I just I watched the fight, watched myself lose, and watched all the crap I said in the preview and thought, do I want to be that guy? Is that the guy I want to put out there? Particularly as I'm at the end of my career, I've got, 1 or 2, maybe 3 fights left in me. Do I want to be remembered for the guy who's offending everybody to the bitter end? Not really. Not when he doesn't really mean it. Not when he doesn't really believe it. I'd rather just be myself and let people might think I'm a complete moron, an idiot. They've got no time for me. Okay, good for them. It's not. I don't want to be liked by everybody. I just want people to look at the merit of my work. I want people to watch what I've done in my fights, winning multiple world titles in 2 different weight divisions. I've got a strong body of work. I'd rather people remember that than the headlines for me being offending somebody maybe.
You talk about the body of your work. How pissed off are you now in retrospect with the injury that you got against Klitschko?
It's part of my story. It is what it is. I can't kind of look back. I can't do anything about it. So it is what it is. You go into a fight in the best shape you can get into, and that's it. It is what it is. You try your best, and sometimes your best isn't good enough. And if it's not good enough, you just take it like a man. Maybe I didn't take it like a man then. I was moaning, but once again, I was younger. I was 30 years old. So a lot's happened since then. I've grown up a lot. And, here we are. I'm 37, going on 38 now. And, the heavyweight division looks tremendous at the moment. It looks as strong as it's ever looked. And it's just impressive that I'm still physically able to be part of it.
Would the 30-year-old David Haye have been able to beat Klitschko that night, do you feel, in retrospect, though? I guess that was the...
No, he tried and failed. No, on that night, it's easy to say that, if I'd have done it again, I would have done it this way. But if I'd have done it this way, he might have done something different. So I tried and I failed. So just like with Tony Bellew first time, I tried and I failed.
Yeah.
I've tried and succeeded many times, but some stuff happens. Sometimes you're supposed to win, sometimes you're not. I'm still standing today. I'm healthy right now, and all of those experiences that I've had, I've learned from, and I believe have made me a better fighter today. Sometimes lessons that you learn aren't pleasant. Most of the lessons in life, just good lessons, are painful. So as long as you can process those and become a better human being, it's all positive.
You're a slimmed down version this time around, it looks like, for this fight. Is that a part of the game plan as well? And is that part of the coaching shift away from Shane McGuigan too, that this isn't going to be about power and overpowering Tony Bellew, that it will be about relying on speed and boxing skills?
I'm not saying I don't feel it was part of the plan to adjust my weight. I haven't really been checking my weight or watching my weight. I don't believe a fighter has a perfect weight. The weight I weighed 10 years ago, everybody, every 37-year-old, I'm sure would wish they weighed what they did do when they were 27. But as you get older, the human body adapts, it changes, it thickens up a little, particularly around the midsection. So everyone puts on a few pounds as you get older. So I'm not looking at my prior weights. I'm looking at my performance in the gym, in sparring, and focusing on that. I'm not in a weight-governed sport. Heavyweight, anything over 14 stone 4 or 90 kilos is heavyweight. I'm not trying to get as close to that as possible. I'm just eating healthy. I'm training hard. I'm sleeping, resting, and whatever I stand on the scales, I will be. I'm not trying to make a particular weight. I don't believe I'll be as heavy as I was for the first fight, as I've been able to do a lot more training sessions for this training camp than I did do for the first fight with Tony Bellew. I've been able to do a lot more sparring. I've done a lot more sort of conditioning sessions. So as a result, I believe the continued daily work has allowed me to sort of shift a lot of unnecessary body fat. You know, I was carrying probably 10 pounds, I'd say 10 pounds of unnecessary body fat into that first fight with Tony Bellew. And I'm the type of athlete who you don't really need to be putting unnecessary body fat on. It doesn't benefit me in any way, shape or form. So I haven't actively tried to do that. I've just trained hard, and it's kind of just melted off me through the long training camp that I've had.
So let's assume that you win this fight. You said to us earlier you've got 2 or 3 more fights left, and as you've mentioned, the heavyweight division is pretty...
Whether I've got 2 or 3 fights depends solely
on if you win.
How this fight goes.
Okay. The plan would be, so, like, again, assume you win, right? Just for the sake of this. Who in the heavyweight division do you want at that point?
It depends how I win. If I win and struggle, if I get knocked down, I get cut, and it's a life and death fight, then I feel I'll call it a day. As realistically, I couldn't, with a hand on heart, say if I can't conclusively beat Tony Bellew, then what would the point of trying to get in a ring with an absolute monster like Anthony Joshua? I'd only get hurt. Because if I can't deal with dispatch of someone like Tony Bellew in good fashion, then how the hell am I supposed to do it with someone who's 6'6", 18 stone shredded, 10 years younger than me, undefeated, pretty much knocked out everyone he's ever fought? What chance have I got? I'll have nearly zero chance. So it solely depends on how I look in this fight. I need to, if somehow I can rewind the clock and look like my old self and have genuine belief that I can achieve the heights that I have done in the past, then that's a conversation I'll need to have after the fight. But prior to going into Tony Bellew, I can't look past him. I looked past him in the first fight and came seriously unstuck. So my whole boxing career potentially ends on May 5th, and I'm doing everything humanly possible to make sure it doesn't.
Do you rate Bellew as a fighter now after that first fight?
Yeah, you have to. He did some real clever stuff in there. He made me miss, made me pay. He was in great shape. He stood up to me. He gave me some problems, and he beat me. So you have to give a man respect when he's taken some big shots, dished them back out, and got the victory. And I'm just looking forward. I don't believe that was my best. That was the best version of myself, and I believe it. Just sitting here now, 3 weeks prior to the fight, I'm in a lot better condition than I was on fight night. Just over a year ago. Yeah,
look, you didn't even bring it up, but you were injured in that fight, and I guess that's a kind of sign of the maturity and the difference of who you are now than when you were 30. You were badly injured in the Bellew fight.
Listen, apparently he was injured as well. All boxers are injured in one way, shape, or another. We spar. We do hundreds of rounds of sparring. So you're carrying niggles, you're carrying injuries, you're masking injuries. And come fight night, it's all about whose body holds together the best. And that night, Tony Bellew's body held better. It held better because he was in better condition. He was mentally and physically ready for the fight. I clearly wasn't. My body fell apart. So this time round, I've done what I believe is necessary to get my body into the condition that's required for a tough, hard, grueling 12-round contest against someone who's a lot better than Tony Bellew. So come fight night, I truly believe we're going to see something very, very special. With the stuff that Ismail Salas, my new coach, has been working with me on, is stuff that I've really absorbed. My new coach, strength conditioning coach, Ruben Tabarez, who worked with me for my Nikolai Valuev fight and all my heavyweight title fights, he's back on the team. So we've gone back to the old school. We've gone back to what made me what I once was. And he seems to be sort of summoning out the old version of myself. You know, the session I just done in the gym just then, I haven't done for 5-6 years, and it was so tough. But I can feel the muscle fibers starting to percolate, and I'm really looking forward to showing the world that, you know, I'm not an old David Haye. You know, I can still, you know, rewind the clock.
It's like the plot of Ocean's 11, the way you're describing it there. Look, you've been great with your time. Just to finish up, we were having a debate about whether or not we could speak to you and help you promote the fight after what you'd said last year. But I'm really glad we did have this chat, because I know so often sports people get thrust into the limelight as role models, and it's not necessarily a role that they're comfortable with or happy with. But actually, you know, people learning from their mistakes is one of the most important things that we can all do as human beings. And to hear you say that you were sorry for what you said last year, I hope gives comfort to people who did feel genuine hurt about it, and who are also, and probably were up to that point, either David Haye fans or boxing fans generally. Yeah,
it's a tough call with sports where there's a lot of emotion, particularly with particularly boxing, where you're training so hard. You've had to travel, you know, 3 hours in a cooped up car, and then you've got emotions are really running high, and it's tough to judge somebody. How many times have you had an argument throughout your life where you've said something to a loved one, a friend, an enemy, someone in a pub, that really, looking back, I wish I didn't really say that. But sometimes sportsmen can get judged for the rest of their life on something they say in the heat of passion, and it's a tough one. All you can do is, as you said, learn from it and try to be a bigger man next time.
David Haye, enjoy the build-up to the fight, and I hope you enjoy the fight as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Take it easy.
Hey, hope you enjoyed that latest offering from Off the Ball. If you want to subscribe, and you should, check out just up here. All our latest stuff is just down here. Generally, knock yourself out.